Hey guys, it's Mr. Walker here, and welcome to another Math Walker with Mr. Lesson. I'm sorry, another Walker lesson with Mr. Math. Something like that. Regardless, today we're talking math today, and I'm excited, super excited about this lesson. I'm super excited about every lesson, really, but especially this lesson because we're getting to talk about, or we're getting into working with shapes, right? We've been doing some area and some perimeter and some volume and all of these things that have to do with geometry, which I super love, but especially getting into shapes and sorting shapes and different things like that. It's always kind of fun to me. Geometry I've always liked because in a past life, back when Mr. Walker was a teenager, like 137 years ago I think it was, I used to be a land surveyor, okay? And in land surveying, where the guys standing in the middle of the road with those cool instruments and stuff like that, and we're always working with like angles and distances and figuring out like shapes of property or where roads need to go and things like that. So you can really see some real world use for these skills that we're using, okay? So again, that's what we're going to be doing today. Specifically today, we're going to be learning how we can draw trapezoids and clarify them, characterize them, classify them by what they're made of and the different properties they have and things like that, their attributes, if you will. So we're gonna go through that today. We're gonna be not only identifying trapezoids and polygons and quadrilaterals, learning all those terms again, but we're gonna actually be making some of our own and learning about the angles and what those angles mean and what we can kind of use them for. So a lot of exciting stuff going on today. So you will need a couple things today in order to do that. One is there's a template that has like a collection of polygons on it and is available in the module. You might want to print that out and cut it out because we're going to be sorting it today. If you want to really get your hands on some shapes, you could do that. If you have a ruler and a protractor, those are going to come in very handy today too, because not only are we going to be drawing some trapezoids and some quadrilaterals, you need that ruler to help you out, but we're going to be measuring some of their angles, so a protractor is going to be very helpful as well. So if you have those things, that'd be great. And some paper to draw on, crayons, markers, whatever you want to be able to draw out your shapes and things like that. So once you have those things and you're ready to go, just go ahead and click continue, and we'll get some making some shapes here. Alright guys, awesome. So the first thing I want to start off with is I want to review a bit about some of the terms that I just mentioned. Quadrilaterals, polygons, trapezoids, things like that. And I know I'm an awesome teacher, but the Math Antics does an awesome job of kind of explaining this and tying them all together in a really cool way. So what we're going to do is we're going to step aside for a second. We're going to take a look at that part of the video, kind of classify or define some of those terms again, just to kind of refresh our memories, and then we'll get into our work specifically with trapezoids, okay? So you'll see their video come up, watch that for a little bit, and then we'll come back together. All right, awesome. A lot of good definitions in there, right? And basically what we're dealing with here is we have polygons, right? Polygons are any shapes with straight sides, okay, with like straight lined sides. So basically any shape really can be a polygon. Now quadrilaterals are polygons, but they're polygons that have four sides. Quadrilateral, like a quad roller skate or a quad four-wheeler that you might drive on. Those are quadrilateral, or those are things that have four things. That's what the word quad means. So when we're sorting shapes, and here I have a box of polygons, we can sort them. If they're just regular polygons, they don't have four sides, they have less than four, they have more than four. For right now, we can put them in polygons. If they have four sides, we're going to put them in quadrilaterals because that's what we're kind of looking at and focusing on today. So if you have your shapes that you printed out from the module, you can grab those. I'm going to go through my box of shapes here, and we're going to take a look. So let's look at this first shape here, shape M, if you will. This shape has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it has 6 sides. So it's still a polygon, but it's not a quadrilateral because a quadrilateral has 4 sides. So I'm just going to put this guy over here for now in my other polygon section. All right, let's pull out another one here. All right, again, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So it doesn't have 4. It's not a quadrilateral. This is going to be another polygon here. All right, let's take this guy out. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 sides. So I'm going to put this in my quadrilateral kind of bucket over here. Let's keep going through. Here's another one with 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. 4 sides there. So here's another quadrilateral. Here's another one. 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, finding some good quadrilaterals in here. Let's reach down into this bucket a little bit more. Ooh, look at this crazy guy. Looks a little bit different, but let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 sides. So again, this is going to be a quadrilateral. I'm going to let you guys work through the rest of these. I'm sure you can sort out the rest of them. So get them sorted just right now between quadrilaterals and polygons, and then we're going to come back together and break them down even a little bit more. All right, great. So I got all my box of polygons cleared out. I have my polygons over here, regular polygons. They just don't have 4 sides. We were looking for the polygons that had 4 sides, and I moved them over here to my quadrilateral section. Now we're going to separate this one more time, and we're going to separate our group of quadrilaterals into trapezoids and non-trapezoids. So what is a trapezoid and a non-trapezoid? How do we figure out what that is? So we're going to get a new definition going here. So you know what that means.
Math vocabulary.
Math vocabulary time. Not much of a better time, I don't think, really. Anyway, math vocabulary time. So trapezoid is a new vocabulary term. You might have heard it before. I'm sure you've probably heard it before. But we're going to kind of put some real details and real definition onto this word is. So a trapezoid. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral, so it's going to have 4 sides, and at least one of the pairs of opposite sides is going to be parallel. Okay. Now there are some difference of opinions out there as to the correct definition of a trapezoid. Some people say it has to have just one side of parallel opposite sides. Okay. Other people say that it can have at least one. For our purposes and what we're doing in math, we're going to say it could have at least one set of parallel sides. Okay. So let me get to a blank page real quick. And let's kind of dive into what I'm talking about here. So if I'm drawing a quadrilateral, I know it's going to have 4 sides to it, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 sides. So this is a quadrilateral. What would make it also a trapezoid is if at least one of these pairs of sides were parallel. So if I look at this side here, and if I look at this side here, I know my drawing is not perfect, but these lines are parallel to each other. Parallel means they're going to keep running along next to each other and never touch. They're never going to cross over or anything like that. So these lines will be parallel. They're going to stay going straight forever and never ever touch. These lines here, if I were to expand upon my side lines here, they're not parallel. So eventually they're going to run into each other, okay? And they're not staying the same distance away from each other, so they're not parallel. But by definition, a trapezoid has at least one pair of parallel sides. This one has one pair of parallel sides, therefore it's a trapezoid. It also has 4 sides, which makes it a quadrilateral, which then can make it a trapezoid. Okay? Okay, so those are some things to keep in mind. Now, technically, by the term we're going by, our trapezoid has to have at least one pair of parallel sides, which means it could have more than one, but it has to have at least one. So, if I drew this shape, it's quadrilateral, right? It has a pair of parallel sides. It actually has 2 pairs of parallel sides, but it has at least one, right? So technically, this is also a trapezoid, all right? But we know it more often as a rectangle because it fits into that even more specific category of a rectangle, okay, which has 2 pairs of parallel sides. So this can get a little confusing because of the multiple definitions for terms, but again, for our purposes here, a trapezoid is going to have at least one side of parallel sides, okay? One pair of parallel sides, I should say. Cool, so let's go back to our shapes, all right, and let's start pulling out some shapes here and taking a look. So this guy, trapezoid or not? Well, we know he's a quadrilateral, so that's one of the characteristics that a trapezoid needs to have. Let's see if we expand these lines out a bit, if they're running parallel or not. So I'm going to just kind of draw these out like this, maybe a little bit more here. So to me, that one's not perfectly straight on my drawing, but that's okay. But to me, this looks like we have at least one set of parallel sides, and in this case, we have 2 sets of parallel sides. So this guy, he's going to be a trapezoid, so we're good to go on this one. Let's take a look at this guy here. All right, if I were to expand these lines out, and this is where that ruler can come in handy because you can kind of draw those lines, right? So I could draw a line here, draw a line here. Looks to me like those guys are going to match or meet at some point, so they're not parallel. Let me go along this guy here. That's not perfect, but we can move it down a little bit. That looks better. And then draw it out along here. Oh yeah, if you really exaggerate this, you could tell these aren't parallel either because they're moving further and further away from each other. So this guy is not a trapezoid. We'll put him over here. Not a trapezoid. Cool. Alright, so what about this guy here? Trapezoid, not trapezoid. Well, I could tell right away that this top and this bottom line, they're parallel. So this guy's good. He could stay here. Let's look here. Uh-oh. This guy snuck in. Oh, he's got 5 sides. He goes over here. Sneaky, sneaky shapes. Okay. What about this one here? This one here. Alright, so if I were to expand out these lines, they look like they're running parallel. So it's trapezoid. I don't even need to check the other side. They're running parallel. It has 4 sides. This is a trapezoid. So I'm going to let you sort the rest. Think about whether they're trapezoids or not, and then we'll come back and we'll share. Alright, I think most of these were pretty easy. Like these ones that have the sides matching like this, they have parallel sides. They're going to be trapezoids. That's easy enough to see, I think. And then this one down here is definitely a non-trapezoid. I don't see any parallel lines there. But I wanted to take a look at these 2 trapezoids and just kind of draw some lines to make sure that we're seeing things right. So if I were to expand out like this line here, and then along this line here, yeah, even though those looked close to being parallel, they're not parallel. So this guy, he's going to move down here. He's not a trapezoid. And then if I were to check this guy, to me these look pretty close to being parallel on this side here. So let's draw some lines and see what we think. Let me fix this one a little bit in a second. Yep, even though those look pretty close, they're going to touch eventually. So again, this guy is not parallel. He has no parallel sides, so he is not a trapezoid. So our trapezoids, it looks like, are A, D, B, K, and J. Okay, so those are our trapezoids. So pretty cool so far. All right, so we've identified polygons. We've sorted those into quadrilaterals, which are 4-sided shapes. Then we sorted those into trapezoids and not trapezoids, because we know that trapezoids have at least 1 parallel side on them. Okay, so I feel like we're making some connections so far here. We're defining some terms and classifying things a little bit. So let's get our hands dirty by trying to make some of these shapes ourselves. Okay, so I'm going to switch over so you guys can see. I'm going to draw and do some things. So this part, you definitely need your ruler and your paper and maybe even a pair of scissors if you have them. So grab that stuff and then meet me over at my desk, and we'll keep working away. All right, guys, we're back here, and we're going to actually be taking what we just learned about trapezoids and using them to draw some of our very own trapezoids and talk about the angles and some of the relationships that it has. Now, I have my camera hooked around my neck here so you guys can actually see what I'm drawing here on my board. So 1, because I think it'll be a little easier to see. 2, because my document camera is broken, and 3, because I like looking like a nerd wearing cool technology around my neck. I mean, what's cooler than that, right? So we're gonna take a look. We're gonna draw some trapezoids together, and then talk about them a little bit. So looking back at what we did when we sorted the shapes, okay, we had a lot of different shapes that we sorted through to kind of make sense of what trapezoids are. I want you guys to go ahead and draw a trapezoid. All right, so let's think about this first before we just get in drawing lines and stuff like that. What are some attributes of a trapezoid? What does a trapezoid need to have? Right, well, it needs to have 4 sides, right? That's one thing because it's a quadrilateral, so it's going to have 4 sides. What else does it need to have? Also, it needs to have at least one pair of parallel lines. Now, it can have more than that, but it needs to have at least 1, okay? So we're going to draw a quadrilateral. If you want, you can try one out on your own first and then take a look at what I do, or you can just watch with me and kind of draw along with me if you want to feel more comfortable. So we could really draw any of the shapes that we saw here, or we could try to come up with our own. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 4 lines here. So let's start by, let's see, I'm going to do one right about here, and then maybe we'll draw one coming up this way a little bit. Cool. And it's okay if your lines kind of overlap one another a little bit. Not really a big deal. Now, what I have to keep in mind is I know these sides definitely are not going to be parallel. So I need to make sure that I have a line parallel to this line. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can kind of just like eyeball it a little bit. Even if you want to use like the other side of your ruler and go, okay, well this looks like another side, so I could just go like that, and there we go. So inside here, I now have a trapezoid, okay? These sides are parallel. It has at least one pair of parallel sides, which is great. And these sides aren't parallel, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, okay? So if you drew a different parallelogram, you can kind of look at yours and compare it to mine, and what do you see as the same, what do you see as different, all right? Maybe if you have a partner nearby, you can check with them as well. But some of you might have something very similar. Some of you might have things that are a little bit different. That's okay, as long as you have the right characteristics that you need to have. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do with my trapezoid here is I'm going to label my angles, okay? So whenever you draw a shape, a polygon that has like those straight sides on it, you can label the angles to be able to kind of like identify the shape, if you will. So I can call this A, B, call this guy C, and this guy down here we will label as D. Now typically we can label that on the outside of the shape, but I'm going to draw it inside just for, you'll see why in a minute coming up. So if I wanted to measure these now, I could take my protractor and I can lay it out here to measure these shapes. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Walker forgot his protractor up at school, and I'm at the home office today, but that's okay. We're going to make it work because I'm going to put my picture in here, and then I could use my virtual protractor to kind of help me out. So I want to measure the angles, all the different angles on this trapezoid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my protractor up here at a dot, okay, at the corner, basically, and I'm going to put my 0 along one line, and then I'm going to count up here. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, not quite to 70. You can see this other line coming across here, not quite to 70. It's about halfway. My line's kind of thick there, so I would say it's about 65, maybe 64, 63, somewhere in there. Any of those I think would be fairly accurate, so I'm just going to go ahead. I know you're not going to see me write it on the board, but I'm going to write it on my paper here of 64 degrees, right? Which means now I can come up to my next angle here. So I'm going to go to B now, and well, I guess that's not going to really help me if I put it that way. So I'm going to have to turn this all the way around. I could do it this way. This would look pretty good. I could have also done this like totally upside down too and done it that way, but I'm going to go here, and again I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to count up this way by tens, not the 170. That's if I was coming around the other way, starting at 0 the other way, but I'm starting at 0 here. So I'm going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, all the way up to 70, 80, 90, 100. It's about between 110 and 120. That one looks pretty good on the spot. I'm going to call that 115. So my angle for B is going to be 115 degrees. Cool. Now I'm going to come over here to angle C. This one I am going to kind of turn around here. Put it in the middle there. Perfect. And again, start at 0, and I'm going to count all the way up, and let's see, that's almost in the same spot. Man, I'm pretty good at this, but I'm going to say it's about maybe 116 or so, something like that. You know what? Just for the sake of it, I'm going to keep it at 115 because why not? Okay, then I'm going to come down here. And again, you want to be as accurate as possible. But one thing with a protractor is, you know, depending on, like, for example, on mine here, how thick my lines are that I'm measuring, depending on just like variances in the drawing and things like that, it's not always going to be perfect. You're going to be within, I would say, 5 degrees, but it could be a little bit off here or there, and that's okay. So we're kind of, you know, knowing our estimates and our rounding skills are going to kind of help us in this situation here. So let me go up here, start at 0 again. Now I'm counting on the outside of this, okay, because of the way my angle's laid out. So 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Oh man, look at that. That's about 60, I would say 64 degrees, 63. Again, I'm just going to say 64 to keep it kind of close with the other one. Perfect. Okay. So now I got my angle. So let me, all right, so now that I have my trapezoid drawn, my angles measured out, I'm going to switch back to my cool neck camera because I want to show you guys the next step that we're going to take, which is, now that I have this done, and you can see I have my angles labeled and measured and my measurements written in there, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut out this trapezoid, okay? So if you have your trapezoid too and you've measured your angles, go ahead and cut out yours too, and then join me back and we'll go over the next steps. All right, and again, this doesn't have to be perfect, but the straighter you can cut it out, the better that this next step's going to work. So as I said earlier, usually we would write our our angle like labels on the outside because it just looks a little bit neater. You don't have to cram things in. But we're going to see why in a second, why we didn't do that. What we're actually going to do is we're going to cut this trapezoid into into fourths, okay? And we're going to cut it into fourths to kind of illustrate something about the angles and that we can always see when we have shapes with angles, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it into fourths, and not only am I going to cut it, but I'm going to cut it like kind of wavy because we're going to want to line up our straight edges out here. So if I have all straight edges, I might not be able to identify my angles as easy, but that's what we're going to do. So let me go ahead and just kind of cut this up like, yeah, okay, cool. And then we'll cut this guy here. So now we have like puzzle pieces, right, that I could put back together if I needed to. So there we go, right? So there's my trapezoid, but I kind of have isolated each one of those angles now because this is what I want us to take a look at, okay? Check this out. So if I were to take two of these angles here, let's say I take like two opposite angles and kind of like line them up. See, almost kind of like that. So now we have like a straight line going here, right? So now that I have that straight line going there, if I were to take those two measurements, that 115 and that 64, which I know it's kind of a little bit hard to read there, but if I were to take that 115 and that 64 and add them up, I would get 179, which is pretty close to 180. So if you take opposite corners from your trapezoid, line them up to make a straight line, your angles should add up to make 180 because it is a straight line, okay? So if I did that with those two, and I did it with these two, let's see, line these guys up. Here to make a straight line, got to make those angles touch B and D, and I'm making a straight line. Again, that 64 and that 115, that's going to add up to 179, which is pretty close to 180. So I wasn't completely accurate in my measurement on my protractor, but I was pretty close, right? All right, now if I were to take these now, let's say, and combine them together so that all of the angles touched. Let's see, so there's A, there's D. Let's get B in here somewhere. Come on, B, be a friend. All right, now that they're all touching there in the center and all of those lines line up and they're all nice and straight there, if I were to add up that 64, 115, and 115, what would I get? I would get 358, which is 2 degrees away from 360. So we could say that all of the angles in our trapezoid, if we add up all of the angles, we should get 360 because they're basically going like all the way around that shape, right? So we can use this to help us out, especially if we come across trapezoids or angles or something like that we have maybe one of the angles identified but not the rest. Well, we could figure out what the other ones are if we have one or two of them identified, because together all of them are going to have to add up to 360. Okay, so that's going to help us in a lot of different ways, which is totally cool. So you're going to see that at some point today or in future lessons where you're going to have to find the angle of trapezoid. So you're going to have two of the angles, and then you're going to have to find them two missing angles, okay? That's something you might come across from time to time. And we know it's going to have to add up to 360, so you'll have to do a little bit of math in there, see if you can figure out how to problem solve and figure out what the other two angles would be. I also want to mention one more thing about the trapezoid that I drew, another kind of vocabulary term we can throw in there, and that is that this is an isosceles trapezoid. The reason being is because my two angles at the bottom here, they both measured the same distance. They were both 64, which meant that my top angles were also both the same. They were both 115. So anytime you have a trapezoid that has matching kind of base angles down here, it's going to be an isosceles trapezoid. So just another kind of term, another way we can classify these trapezoids, okay? I'm not going to see them, well, I guess that's kind of like the common trapezoid you might think of when you hear that term. So you're going to see it, but just to be able to identify them and just know what that is, okay? So today you're going to practice with this a little bit more. Let me go ahead and get this crazy thing off my neck here. But you're going to practice a little bit more with drawing some trapezoids, and you're going to have certain like restrictions that you're going to have, whether it's using a right angle or no right angles or having obtuse angles. And if you need to review some of those terms, feel free to do that. You can go jump back in some other videos and review that, or even check out Brain Pop or Math Antics or something like that. Or just let me know, because I'd be more than happy to help you with that if you needed some help. So I thank you guys for watching, for playing along with me, for having some fun with trapezoids and shapes. And again, if you need anything at all, please reach out and let me know. And I can't wait to see how you guys shape up in this lesson. Dad joke. I got a dad joke in. All right, guys. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.